Welcome to One Mind Brainwaves. I'm your host, Brandon Staglin. Today's topic is employee mental health support in the COVID era. As the year 2020 draws to a close, it's been a year unlike any other, in which all of us have had to deal with mental health challenges in one form or another. And now we're going to take a look at how employers are responding to these challenges, both now in 2021 and beyond. And musician Robert Crenshaw will bring us a great music video he produced specially for us about the 5 o'clock world at the end of the workday that will resonate, I think, with everybody, and it will be a great way to start the podcast. Excuse me. Okay, but first a story. So I have experience with workplace mental health. Basically, in the 1990s, I was employed as an astronautical engineer. That was my first career. And I had schizophrenia at the time, which I still do now. But my employer, though it was a very nice place to work, didn't have any open culture around mental health and resilience for employees, nor did they offer any explicit programs for employee mental well-being. So I didn't tell anybody about my mental health challenges that I experienced. And this became a very big burden to kind of hide that aspect of my experience over so much time. And then when I began to develop symptoms again after the stresses mounted of the job, I had nowhere to turn to seek help from my employer, where I actually spent most of my waking hours and was the centerpiece of my life. So after a few months of this, I had a second episode of schizophrenia, and I had to ultimately resign from the job. And I'm confident that if my employer had a more open culture around workplace mental health and programs to help employees with support for their mental health, my life trajectory would have been very different, and that it's likely that I would have been on a different career path today, and would have saved me perhaps years of setback in my wellness and well-being. But fortunately, we have two executives today who are going to talk about their company's best practices that they're offering for their employee mental wellness. It's a very different world today, and I'm excited to see the changes taking place in these companies and others. First, we're very lucky to have a wonderful musician with us today, Robert Crenshaw. He's the author of my mythological narrative, A Rock Odyssey, which details his experiences and his adventures in the world of rock and roll. He's a first-rate storyteller and a true Renaissance man. Robert Crenshaw, welcome to Brainwaves.
Oh, thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to see you today. And thanks for making this great video for us. Excited to watch that in just a few minutes here. So let's start with a little bit of your background, okay?
Well, okay. I grew up outside of Detroit, and always super interested in music. Both of my parents used to sing, and like when we'd go on trips and stuff, singing in the car and all that, and then of course, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, the Beatles on Ed Sullivan was like the biggest thing that ever happened, in my little mind. And, I was kind of interested in music before that, because there was this record by the Safaris called Wipeout, prior to that I really, really liked. But of course, when the Beatles were on TV, like we'd bring out tin cans and stuff and beat on them with pencils. And, I was really hooked on it. So I had drums when I was like 4 years old. I had a drum set when I was 7, and then I got another one when I was 9. I mean, so my parents were crazy supportive about music, with us. I think they wanted us to have a family band or something, But anyway, it was cool, and I got into bands, which was probably, instead of being into sports, being in bands was, the way that I approached my youth and adolescence. And it probably, kept me out of some trouble and got me in some, kinds of different trouble, as well. And, but I grew up, in the Detroit area playing in bands. And when I was 17, I joined the Musicians Union and was playing in bars, at night while I was going to high school. So that was, that's kind of the start of my musical career anyway.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing about your early influences and some of your early life in music. That's fascinating. And, as you said, after playing with a variety of local bands throughout your teens and working and studying in the recording industry, you played gigs in the city. And And your brother Marshall signed ultimately with the Warner Brothers Records, and your band hit the road, which is exciting. And your memoir recounts a wild ride with some of music's biggest names and your adventures thereof. And but I wanted to ask, in such an environment, how challenging is it to maintain a sense of mental balance and well-being during those challenging times?
Well, for me, it was impossible, and during the 1980s, there was a ton of drugs around. And one of the things is like, culturally, is that if someone wanted to befriend you, they would offer you, hey, would you like some cocaine, So that kind of stuff was always around. And, as we all know, it's not particularly good for your mental health. And so, I mean, I just didn't really for several years, I had a really hard time just because the pressure was on, within social circles to take drugs and drink a lot of booze and stuff. And then, if when you're a kid and you think about, well, what do rock and rollers do on the road? I mean, that's it. So, it took me a long time to grow out of that, and really eventually when I met my wife and stuff, she was kind of like, well, you can have this or you can have this, but you can't have this and that, you can't have both things. So I, cleaned myself up, brushed myself off, and straightened up. But I was thinking about this, and that the first time that I ever sought out, a therapist, at all, was when I got booted out of my brother's band. I mean, I really just got replaced, but it was really, my feelings were so hurt, but I really loved my brother. So it was really, torn up. But so since then, kind of whenever I've had problems, I have no problem just, finding a therapist or recently I have been seeing a psychiatrist for, some stress related kinds of problems. I mean, one thing that I think we would all agree on is that between COVID and between the election, I think that most of us have been pretty stressed out for the last, year or so. And so anyway, as far as the music and the mental health, I just wasn't mature enough to really know that I should go see a therapist, or a psychiatrist and talk things out, that I needed to talk out.
Well, it's great you found more support now that seems to be helping you, and you seem like you have a great sense of humor, a great approach to life, and as it comes across in your memoir, which I had the privilege to listen to. And so I'm glad you're in a better place, at least for your mental health. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were talking about schizophrenia, and what I get is auditory hallucinations. And
Really?
when I first had that happen to me, I thought for sure that I was experiencing schizophrenia, and I was really, really terrified, by it. And it took a long time to figure out what was going on. And it's a lot better than it was. But I mean, something, I don't know, it's just stress, and obviously the COVID thing, I guess that's why we're here, it's because it's to talk about it and talking about managing it.
Yeah, that's right. It must have been scary for you to experience that for the first time. Remember when I first heard voices, it really threw me for a loop. I had no idea whether I needed to pay attention to it or what. But fortunately, I'm able to, when I have experiences like that now, just kind of take it in stride and let it pass, and it doesn't really throw me off anymore. And it's more under control with the medications that I take as well. But yeah, different people have different experiences like that. It's true. Thanks for sharing that too.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, what? I didn't hear voices. I hear music, but it's like scary music, or scary organ music and stuff,
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Everyone has different way their brain works. And so you're a musician. Maybe that's why you hear the music. Yeah.
I think so.
So your story in your memoir eventually ends with you and Marshall, as you say, collaborating from time to time, but pursuing separate paths. Tell us what you're up to today. Does it involve crazy rock star hours, or have you joined the 5 o'clock world?
I'm a teacher and a writer. I work a lot with the electrical apprentice program for a major automotive company. And I also get to direct, instructional videos. So I have a lot of room to be creative, with it. And I love being a teacher. I just really, really love it. And so that's a good fit. And then it also, because I am on the road it gives me time to do creative things musically. And then recently I'm involved in a play, a theatrical production. I wrote the music for it about 15 years ago. And it's kind of a long story, but we started and then it stopped and it started and it stopped, and we didn't do anything with a long time. But just recently I got back together with the writer and the guy who we hired as the producer. And it's like, it looks like we're kind of ready in a more productive, frame of mind than we have been at certain times, so I'm excited about it. It's fun.
What a great project to funnel your passion into and your creativity. That's fantastic. I can't wait to see the play when it comes out. Maybe it'll be on video, or are you going to do it virtually because of the pandemic, or how are you going to do it?
We're still talking about how we're doing it. We're exploring different venues, and then also some different scales. It's like, do you do it as a Zoom session or do you do it on a stage? With 7 actors and sets and, and all that. So, I mean, in a perfect world, I'd love to see like a college repertory, theater do it, so that would be really a thrilling thing, just do actors do it.
Well, maybe you could have multiple iterations. That'd be great to see. And, But you are still producing great media, even before the play. Your cover of the Vogue's classic 5 O'Clock World is phenomenal. And we're really excited to watch your video that you've made specially for us. Thank you so much of that wonderful song. It's one of the tracks on your album, Dog Dreams. And you've recently produced this video. How did you manage to so beautifully capture trying to live and work in the year 2020?
Well, it was suggested that I was going to perform that song 5 O'Clock World, and I thought, no, I don't think I'm going to perform that, but I'd like to make a video for it, and because I make a lot of videos. And immediately, I thought, who can I get involved with? Get involved in with me, because I always like to have, a group of people come together and work on a project together. So I pulled in, a couple people, but then I thought, I need pictures of people working and people with masks on, and people who are in love, in it. So I just asked people on Facebook. I have about 2,800 Facebook friends, right? So if I put out something, I get 100 responses pretty quick. And so I asked for pictures, and people sent me these wonderful, touching pictures, and also pictures of their kids and, just all this stuff. So I had a lot of different media to choose from. And so, it was just like one of those joyful kind of processes, it's like, tee-hee-hee, do this little thing, put in this funny picture. And it was just nothing but a joyful process.
That's so awesome. We're all in this together, as your experience has demonstrated. People come together to support your work, and it must be heartwarming to observe and have happen.
One of the things that was really fun is that people would post, "Hey, I'm at 2 minutes and 15 seconds," and Julie's at 3 minutes and 21 seconds, So these people just came to see themselves, that's perfectly wonderful, But it was fun. You could tell that it made some people happy.
It certainly made me happy. So let's watch your video now, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, awesome.
Every morning just to keep a job, I gotta find my way to the hustle and mob. Sounds of the city pounding in my brain, while another day goes down the drain. But it's a 5 o'clock world when the
Wow, Robert, what a wonderful way to end 2020. Thanks so much for making that amazing video and producing that for us. Love that.
Thank you. Really my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Robert, thanks so much for being with us today on One Mind Brainwaves. And please feel free to stick around during the rest of the interview if you like, but hope to have you again on Brainwaves at some point in the future.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Take care.
Yeah.
So now, here to discuss why it's important to make employee mental health a top priority during the COVID era is Susan Podlogar, Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer for MetLife. Viewers, please feel free to post your questions for our guests at any time. Susan, welcome to One Mind Brainwaves.
Brandon, thank you so much for having me. I just have so much energy, so much respect for you and the work that you are doing. And I really appreciate everything in this opportunity to be here today.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us today. I deeply admire your work as well. And let's talk a little bit about it, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So let's start right in. For nearly 20 years, MetLife has been producing an employee benefits trend study, which is an important report on the employee well-being. Why did you take on the task of issuing this report? Why is it important, and why don't others do it? And do you find that other employers throughout the United States are paying attention to the findings?
Yeah, it's a great question, very robust. But a couple of things I would say to that. First is, listen, MetLife as a company has the privilege to actually work with 94 of the 100 Fortune 100 companies. And then we also work with 40,000 small businesses around the US, and we provide benefits, right? So we feel this responsibility and almost an obligation to have deep insights about the workforce and what do they need and what are those needs and how do they evolve? Because they do evolve over time, right? And so, as you mentioned, 18 years of doing what we call EBTS, the Employee Benefit Trends Study. And we have been looking at how has the workforce changed over that time? How can employers respond to the needs of their employees? And the one that was coming up in this last year, when COVID started, is, listen, we started getting these signals in the study. COVID came in, we paused the study of having, and we delayed the submission of it externally for a month, and we collected some additional data about COVID and how it was impacting the employee. And what we saw pop for the first time was mental health issues coming to the forefront like we've never seen before. And so what we wanted to do is, so we had the regular EBTS and then the impact of COVID. And then over the summer, what we did is we said, this is really different. This is really compelling. And for employers to be prepared and have their employees prepared, let's do another study specifically on mental health and resilience. And so that's what we submitted in July. And we've gotten a lot of feedback on it, a lot of uptake in it. And it really just all goes back to who we are as a company and what we believe in.
It's so admirable that your company pays such close attention to the impact of your benefits work for the workforce that you support. And it's also amazing that you found this signal, this trend that something that we all kind of believe is happening, but you found the data for it, that there is this mental health crisis taking place today among employees. Do you find that that employers are responding well to the crisis? Are they prepared?
I think they're responding. Are they prepared? If I'm honest and short, the answer is no, right? And we even saw that in our study. So it's not just us judging it. It's the data that's been coming through. So 67% of employers say that, listen, we're coming to a breaking point soon, and an additional 20% say we're already in a mental health crisis. And then when we asked, are you prepared? 90% of them said no. We're not prepared for the crisis. But I don't also think it's the employer only. I do think our employees aren't even prepared, right? And so, if you look at the employee, I don't think they have internalized necessarily the degree of mental strain that they're dealing with. And, one of the things that we did is we asked this macro question, are you experiencing, burnout or depression? And less than half of the people said yes. But if you take the signs of those and you take the factors that then show somebody's with having depression or having burnout, then in that case, 64% are showing at least 5 signs of burnout. And so I just don't think they've internalized that is what they're feeling. And then we had another, I think it was 5.5 million just say, I just don't feel mentally healthy, right? That you have work life, coming together. You've got financial concerns. You've got what's going on. Robert mentioned in society, the elections, things like that. And these things are coming at their peak along with their own physical health. Am I going to be safe? Are my loved ones going to be safe? So, and then I would just say, employees are not, if we put a gym on, a lot of employees will go and use that gym, right? They have this mental construct that their physical health, they know how to do it, they know how to address it, but they have not looked at that same way to utilize the resources that companies put out for employees. And so I think it's both sides of the equation. I think there's a little bit of learning on both sides, but listen, I'm an optimist. Every day I wake up, I'm just grateful I wake up every day. So that's how I start my every single day is thank you for letting me wake up. And I guess I won't know the difference. But anyways, so I'm optimistic of we have more data out there. We have increased awareness out there, and we have more support. And I think probably the most important accelerator that we have on are our conversations. We're having very different conversations, these types of conversations. You look at One Mind at Work, this One Mind at Work has just accelerated because employers are seeing the need for it. So that's my optimism that also comes through.
Well, thanks for sharing a balanced view, ending with the optimism, because that's what we need to be constructive and continue moving forward while recognizing that need to be constructive and move forward, which is great. And looking at the optimistic side, we know that mentally healthy employees are more productive, more engaged, and even happier in their lives. But your report does mention that many employers have said that making mental wellness of their employees a priority is not really high on their list. That is not the case at MetLife. And can you tell us about your holistic approach to building a culture of resilience amongst MetLife employees and how critical that will be to recovery in the post-COVID era?
It's really a great question. And I wish 100% of the companies would have said yes, that they see it as a priority, but it's staggering that you have as many saying that it's not. But they'll get there, right? If they, like you said, if they want the engagement, if they want those employees, that full energy of your employee, you have to make this a priority. And listen, we have 50,000 employees around the globe. And again, I go back to obligation, right? As the head of HR for those employees, I feel that obligation and putting that employee well-being in the center. At MetLife, culturally, we have this incredible culture of caring for each other. And so caring for well-being is something that's not new. I would say it's what we've accelerated and augmented. And, part of my personal passion and why it probably comes out so strongly is, listen, my role is to bring the best of others. I'm a 9th child in my family, and my parents always said, it is our role is to bring out the best of each one of the children. And that's just how I grew up. That's how I was shaped. And so my whole life passion is to bring out the best of others, bring out the best of their gifts, bring out the best of their strengths. But people can't show up if they don't feel strong or they don't even feel brave enough to face the world each day. And so that's really the construct of how we face it. We have incredible leadership at all levels. Having this conversation, our CEO has it in global town halls, has it with our leaders to really make sure it's a forward-thinking topic for us. And so what we've done is listen, I think everything starts is understanding the pressure points with your employees. Look at the data, these trend studies that are out there. Listen to your employees, listen to the surveys, have conversations, and then develop solutions that we've co-developed our solutions. It's not HR sitting in a corner or somebody else, that we have a consultant come in and design these things. We actually co-develop them with our employees so that their insights are there and they'll be very practical and applicable. So one is our Be Well platform, it's a care path. It's a website that employees can curate and create their own care pathways on topics like their finances, coping, their body, relationships. And, the other thing we do is a lot of things is just learning from each other. How do we create those conversations for each other? And we've incorporated that in. And then we do caregiving, for caregivers and for working parents, because, even now, Brendan, I don't know how working parents do it. I stayed home for 5 years. I was a stay-at-home mom. And there were days I could barely just take a shower, right? And I was just caring for my kids. I wasn't doing schooling. I wasn't working full time. I was just trying to take care of 2 kids. So the heroes of our parents and our caregivers it's just amazing. And I have the utmost respect. And so what we did is we trained our leaders to how can you give more flexibility to your employees? We enhanced our benefits, daycare, tutoring. And then we did a lot, again, this concept of peer support, conversations. And I think you said the statement in the beginning, we're all in this together. And that's when you have those peer conversations so you can learn from each other. I'm not alone was kind of the biggest theme that came through with that. And then we're building resiliency with our inclusion efforts and really powering up inclusion, given, the very challenging societal issues that we're facing all around the globe. And we're having more conversations on, and opening our aperture on, micro messaging. How do you show up as an ally, biases that might exist, because we want every employee to show up that, listen, you have a voice, your voice matters, and we want you to show up uniquely of who you are at work. And that's how we all get better. And the last area that we've really focused on was kind of what we call tailored programs, given the needs at the time. So things like staycation, so people disconnect from the work and put that blurred home life, put it to the side and just focus on yourself. Wellness Wednesdays, we had a stress reduction and management course in Japan, where 400 people were invited and over 300 people showed up. And that's in a society and a culture that typically doesn't talk about this. So I think it is critical, right? It's critical to now, but it is critical to coming out of the pandemic. And I would say that, listen, resiliency is about adapting to change. And we know, I would say change is the constant. Resiliency is needed. But what I ultimately believe fundamentally is that caring is the accelerator.
I believe that too. And I think the fact that you're co-developing these programs with your employees is brilliant, and that it probably has contributed to the wonderful engagement that you've seen and the benefits that are accruing to the employees because of that. So hats off to you. If I had a hat on, I'd take it off. Well done. Thanks for doing that. So joining us now is Maria Dee, the Executive Director for Workforce Wellbeing at Kaiser Permanente. Maria, welcome to Brainwaves.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just happy to share our story. So thanks so much.
For sure. You're welcome. Let's go right into the questions. At Kaiser, you too have led efforts to drive organization-wide culture change. You developed a healthy workforce program. Can you tell us about it and why mental health is such a priority for Kaiser Permanente?
Yeah, well, healthy workforces are a workforce well-being program that we've had in place for, I think we're on our 10-year anniversary now. And the program really aims to foster a culture of health and well-being, and really provides our employees the tools and resources they need to live healthier and happier lives. And as part of that work, we actually are guided by a well-being model, one that includes 6 different dimensions, focus on mental health and wellness, of course, but also physical health and safety, healthy relationships, community involvement, career wellness, and financial wellness. And we know that more holistic approach to supporting health and well-being really reinforces what we call total health, which to us is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And put simply, it's, we believe that mental health is an essential part of total health. And so as a healthcare provider and an employer, Kaiser Permanente has made workplace mental health a key priority and really a cornerstone of our health and wellness programs for employees. In fact, our leadership has made mental health and wellness a priority for the organization, as they see it really intrinsically tied to the mission and vision of our organizational goals. And you see that evidence throughout our organization, from the various departments within Kaiser, from government relations to marketing and communications, community health, employee engagement, you name it. We've stood up various mental health work streams in each of those various different departments. So, all of that to say, reducing stigma is really at the core of our workplace mental health practices. Leadership storytelling, public service campaigns, and our internal programs really reflect our commitment to a workplace that supports employees' mental health and their needs.
That's brilliant. And as I like to say, there's no health without mental health. And I'm glad you recognize that in your programs. That's fantastic. And then, so it's a great wellness model that you use. I noticed some parallels between your wellness model and that of MetLife that Susan explained, some of the same domains of focus. Are you modifying this model at all to respond to the changing employee needs and their additional mental health needs during the COVID era?
Yeah, so we're not really modifying the model. The elements have really served us well as a guide, because all of those elements actually significantly impact mental health. And in fact, in addition to the study that Susan shared, there is also another recently published study by JAMA Network Open around the prevalence of depression symptoms in US adults. And in that study, you saw that depression symptom rates for US adults are 3 times higher than before the COVID-19 pandemic. And because of such, Kaiser Permanente is really encouraging our employees to seek our various resources, the main being our employee assistance program. So we've had our EAP program actually in place for over 40 years. It's in-house, so we have our in-house consultants, but we also have a EAP vendor that serves some of our smaller markets outside of California, where we're largely situated. And so this program is really leveraged in every situation, whether it was dealing with a pandemic, all the social unrest, to all the disasters we were experiencing. We were impacted pretty heavily by the California fires. We had employees who actually lost their homes. You name it, any situation, EAP was always plugged in there as a resource to go to. And that service provides our employees with a licensed counselor to gain additional support in a one-on-one setting. But on top of that, our EAP program is also available to host group sessions, provide organizational support and guidance, manager consultations. So they really serve a number of resources. And they have been the program that we've been able to shift and adjust based on the needs that our workforce is experiencing at the time. So for example, one of the more recent topics were around how do we balance work, for the groups that are moving to this remote environment with balancing that and care at home, whether it's a child or a family member, and a significant amount of fatigue and burnout kind of related to that topic. So our EAP program hosted a live teletown hall that focused specifically on that topic, because we saw that being raised as a real concern, and had thousands of people come attend that session. So again, it was an example of how we've kind of adapted to listening to those needs. And Kaiser as an organization, I mean, we stood up immediately once COVID hit, a Here For You call center and website where you can go to. It provides 24/7 support for all things, aside from kind of the mental health support, relief, benefit reliefs, childcare resources, hotel accommodations. And we're constantly kind of updating that as, we kind of move through these COVID phases. So, really during the pandemic, we have been able to really expand a lot of our services. And as an organization, because we're an integrated healthcare system, we also provide mental health to KP members, just not to our employees. And in that space, before COVID, we had less than 20% taking advantage of telehealth, utilizing the virtual option to have mental health visits. It was less than 20% before COVID. And just this year, we're up to 99% of our mental health visits being done virtually. So significant increase in use of virtual care, which we're so pleased. I mean, it really accelerated, this was our goal, long ago. And, the COVID experience really accelerated us to getting to a virtual telehealth setting.
That's
and then
awesome.
On top of, I think it just goes to show you that we have been an agile organization, and we really have tried to leverage not only the great resources we provided our KP members, but also some unique things to our workforce. Probably the last two things I think are worthy of actually noting is that in addition to the telehealth and a number of online resources that KP members can go to, we actually offer now for our KP members 2 self-care apps, so My Strength and Calm, which are at no cost to our employees. Or no cost to KP members, in fact. And so for those employees who are KP members, they have full access to both apps. And we know that for our membership, more than 250,000 members registered for the app in just the first 2 months of those being released, and they continue to climb every day. So just a few examples of some of the things we've been doing to really adjust to providing resources for our workforce.
That's fantastic. What great resources you have available to people to manage their own care, as well as seek care through telehealth and other means. Great how nimble you've been at adapting to the COVID environment and providing what people and employees need during these challenging times. Maria and Susan, let's touch on a question. Let's go to a question that touches on some of the topics we've already gone over, but expands on it. In 2020, naturally, a large percentage of employees, over 50 million, as detailed in the MetLife report, say that their stress, their burnout, and virtual fatigue are worse than ever. And they're sacrificing self-care to manage not only full-time work, but also childcare, as you mentioned, which is extraordinary. How can employers better support employees to manage work-life stress in today's challenging environment? First, Susan, and then Maria, what do you think?
Sure. So, Brendan, I think it's a great question, because the way I look at it, always on means you're always absorbing, right? You're always absorbing these external, and how much can you actually take just to keep absorbing? And so that's a challenge, right? And so understanding of how do you get rid of some of that and be able to just take care of yourself in the world that we're in. And I think it's for us, it's understanding those sources of stress. And Maria, she mentioned some of them already, right? So what we find is it's financial health is one of the biggest stressors that people have. We consistently find that within our research, their physical health, mental health, and social health. And so once you understand those stressors, it's really to build that resilience around it. And what we've done is we've tried to frame it in just 3 areas so that leaders can and also really understand it. And first is personal resiliency. What we want to do is make sure that employees know that they should prioritize their own mental health and their physical health. But we also want them to have the self-awareness of when they should be reaching out for support when needed. Again, sometimes we feel that employees may not even know that continuum of the care that they could be getting. And then the second one is just this cultural resiliency. And cultural resiliency is just for us to say, okay, we want to prioritize the mental health, but again, as Maria mentioned, it's removing this cultural stigma that often blocks employees from getting the support that they need. And what we found is, in our study that we see and the other studies that we're seeing out there, that the stigma that's associated with seeking mental health support is about 37%. But if you double down and you look at it at younger employees, it goes up to 48%. And if you look at Hispanic and Black, you're over 45% on each respectively. And so we really have to be cognizant of, and then how do you pull down those barriers? And I would say that the last one is the supportive resiliency, which is actually offering the actual programs that they can manage the stress by, and providing the comprehensive offering around their holistic wellness. And so, they value, and what we've seen and we offer is the wellness programs, the mental health coverage, relaxation initiatives. I actually did a Wellness Wednesday with our head of health, and we did a stretching in a box breathing session, 15 minutes quick but us visible, as you mentioned, storytelling and seeing the visual support for leaders, not just what we say, but what we also do, because what we do tells their employees much, much more than anything that we say or any type of programs that we put together. So I would say that's some of the ways and areas that we've been looking to prioritize.
Yeah, and what I would say at Kaiser Permanente, we have a significant effort around listening. So really looking at our the needs of employees through listening sessions, through surveys. In fact, when, before COVID, we have had an employee engagement survey in place for several years that includes what we call a culture of health index. And in those questions, it asks questions from leadership support to role modeling to mental health to how is KP just supporting you generally in well-being. And that has really helped us understand some of the gaps that we have. And then when COVID hit, we had a COVID-19 survey, experience survey kind of go out. And again, well-being showing as the most important opportunity. And following that, right, we had all the social unrest hit. And so our CEO himself, along with our chief human resources officer, made rounds with our business resource group leaders and did additional in-person or virtual listening sessions to really get at the core of what kind of pain and what opportunities we have as an organization to better support the mental health and overall well-being of our workforce. So I guess all that to say that listening is a huge priority within our organization. I would say for any organization, starting there, so you really understand what kind of resources you really need to put in place and not making assumptions, because the scale of mental health issues are so widespread and they can vary. And for us as an organization, we have frontline employees to IT, to administrative folks who are moving to a remote environment. And so the stressors and the work environment are different. So we can't take a cookie cutter approach to providing resources. We really got to be very specific to what does our nurses need? What are those that are parents, what do they need? Those that are trying to adjust to this remote life, what do they need? So kind of using the information from our surveys to really help inform that. The other thing we're really seeing, besides burnout, fatigue, which are the obvious, is a significant amount of feeling isolated, so isolation. And I feel like some of the work we're doing around peer support groups and offering like drop-in sessions, well-being drop-in sessions, or EAP-led group sessions, and recognition events, believe it or not, as simple as that, have all really helped employees feel a sense of connection, right? We had a recognition event not too long ago that recognized managers who are actually performing well in this culture of health index I talked about. And I can't tell you the amount of feedback we got with an appreciation of just taking the time to be recognized for their work, because in the middle of all of this going on and the demands we put on managers to kind of adjust to the environment and all these changes, they too wanted, a pause, and it felt really good to get recognized. And so we realized that we need to do more of those types of events. So, those are some of the other things beyond the resources that I shared earlier that we think are going to be really helpful going into 2021.
Fantastic. It's wonderful to hear how you have such a two-way street with your employees and with your managers and involving them at every level of the workforce mental health initiatives that you're putting forward. I'm sure that helps people feel involved and be involved to accelerate the entire program overall. Mm-hmm. Well done. So viewers, don't forget, feel free to post questions for our guests at any time. We're talking today about employee mental health support in the COVID era with Susan Podlogar, Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at MetLife, and Maria Dee, the Executive Director for Workforce Wellbeing at Kaiser Permanente. Viewers, as you post your questions for our guests, also feel free to post comments about how you're doing as 2020 draws to a close. Is your employer helping you with any challenges you may be facing with mental health? Are they helping you build your resilience? Any comments you might have, would love to hear them. And if you find that what our guests are talking about today is useful for you or potentially for others, please share this webcast with others whom you know. So, Susan, back to you. How will the pandemic change companies' approach to programs and benefits? And how should it to ensure that they meet the mental health needs of the evolving mental health needs of their workforce?
Yeah, I think, as you look at it, it's looking at the mental health needs. And I think it's also this holistic wellness, inclusive of mental health. And, it's critical to being able to attract employees, energize employees. And I would say also for employees to be their best and to be strong and to be brave so that they can come into work fully and meet the needs of their customers, their fellow employees, their shareholders. So it's super important to get these elements right. And I would say a little bit in terms of one, just assessing where you are, similar against the data, what might we need, listening to the employees, as Maria said, putting in place the core programs. And then I would say really important, you can have the programs, but if you don't have the right culture, you don't have the right conversations, you actually don't have support for mental health and for well-being. And we even saw that in one of our stats. There's a huge caution. Just because you put in a program doesn't mean you have support for your employees. 75% of the employers said, I do have an open culture to talk about mental health and support mental health, but only 47% of employees actually felt that that was true. So what you say and what you do, there can be a gap there. And if you have that say-do gap, then you're not supporting your employees as they need.
That's a great point. Thank you for going over that. And I've heard many employers say how they have put in programs in place, and employees aren't really jumping on to use them right away. And culture is just so important for that, not only in the workplace but in overall society. For people to access care, there is stigma, and people don't want to access care because of that. So the culture, as you say, is super important. And then Maria. As Susan has said, employers often say they have an open culture on mental health, but many employees don't seek help due to worries about the career repercussions that could happen or fears about the stigma that could be involved. How can we mitigate these barriers and make workers feel more confident that they can safely access these employee mental health programs to build the resilience that they can use?
Yeah, well, gosh, I think I'm going to start with storytelling. As an organization, it's probably been a couple of years now, we actually put a public health campaign together called Find Your Words. Of course, it was a little bit more geared toward depression and, really kind of raising and lifting and encouraging anybody and all people to really start talking about, reducing stigma and talking about the mental health issues that they're experiencing. And then that translated internally to our leaders actually sharing their own stories. We've had leaderships at the C-suite sharing their own personal stories of their own mental health, and not their own, but maybe themselves or family members, to really help people feel more comfortable and give our employees permission. It's okay to talk about this. And then at the end of 2019, we actually launched an online mental health training, 30-minute virtual training with 10 to 15 minutes additional for managers that were really specific to this topic that we're talking about. And it was really to eliminate stigma at the workplace. So it gave them tips and tools and examples, in addition to providing some basic training on signals to see if a peer is experiencing some problems, how to kind of approach that situation and connect them to resources or offer some support by simply asking if they're okay. And so that training has been a significant effort. We're trying to make our way to get all employees to take that. And then on top of that, we developed a mental health advocate network. So a peer-based network, all volunteers who want to champion all the work that we're doing around mental health. And so you just kind of voluntarily sign up. We've got monthly meetings, and we will talk about topics from depression to suicide to, even basic mindfulness and stress reduction techniques. I mean, you name it. Anybody who's a member can bring forward a topic of interest. And as a group, we'll talk about these things and even identify resources. Because we're so large of an organization, we've identified things that are happening in other parts of the organization that we want to spread to everybody. So it's been a beautiful thing. And it feels safe for employees because it was developed by employees and it's kind of led by employees, right? So it's really truly is a peer support network. So, all those things combined, I think we have really been trying to do our part to create a safe space and help people feel encouraged to kind of seek the support that they need.
Fantastic. I'm glad I got this. It's great engagement from your employees and from your members due to the safety, culture of safety you're creating around that. And psychological safety is just such an important thing. Mm-hmm. So finally, Susan and then Maria, as you try to lead your employees in navigating this unprecedented time of mental health challenges during the pandemic and support them in weathering the mental health aftershocks of this crisis, what gives you hope about workplace culture and the workforce of the future? Susan first, then Maria, please.
As I say, I am an optimist, right? So I look at everything in terms of, listen, there's a bright future out there. I think, listen, we have a ways to go. It's really clear. But there are bright spots. And the bright spots I see is that there's an increased understanding. And Brandon, the One Mind at Work, it's one of those accelerators, right? And you said in the past that your employer didn't offer, what you needed, but wow, what an impact that you're having to help others have the right programs in place. So thank you for that first. So I think there is this increased understanding. We're talking about it more. Employers are really understanding that they're becoming more aware, and it's important to support the full person and through their offerings and the culture that they build, through the storytelling, as Maria has said. But I also think, again, I always look at the two-way side. Employees are starting to feel more comfortable in bringing their full selves to work, seeking support when it's needed. And I think this beautiful component that was mentioned too is this offering support to each other, right? That conversation and those conversations are changing. And that's what gives me hope. Again, as I mentioned, I see change is that constant. And we need that resilience is needed, and caring is the accelerator. And we're seeing more caring come through companies, which I really love to see.
That is beautiful. Thanks for sharing all of that. And then Maria, what about you? What gives you hope?
Yeah, gosh, I couldn't agree more with what Susan said around, caring and compassionate conversations that are bubbling up so much more than they have in the past. For me, the bright spots, at least within Kaiser Permanente, is that our leadership is really behind supporting the mental health and wellness, not only of our members and the communities we serve, but for our own workforce. Our own CEO has sent a couple notes now out to employees and leaders, really encouraging work-life balance. As I've mentioned earlier, we've had leaders kind of share their own personal stories. So storytelling as a way to really bring out authentic leadership so that employees are really feeling connected to the mission and vision of what Kaiser Permanente is actually here to do. And then, when we look at all the social unrest that has happened recently and Kaiser's commitment to addressing racism and health equity and now workforce equity, that for us is going to be huge moving into the future. And it's been elevated as a key organizational priority. So I know that the work being done around workforce equity and, running programs like what we call Belong at KP is going to be a new program where we're really going to teach skills around how to be more inclusive so that we're encouraging a culture of belonging and really infusing that into our well-being and mental health work and collaborating really deeply with our equity, inclusion, diversity group. All that collaboration with all the other departments that touch well-being in some way or another has been so much more than I've seen in the last year. And that has been really so positive for us. I say this all the time, it's fortunate, but it's unfortunate that all these pandemics that has hit us this year has really elevated well-being as a priority. But the good news is, at least for our organization, we have had some really strong structures and stepping stones already in place. And now we're seeing a lot of our leaders come together because we all have the same end goal in mind. And that's really just to really lift up and help ensure our employees have resources that they need to support, overall health and mental health. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what you say about equity and lifting up all is important. That's One Mind's motto, accelerating brain health for all. And if you don't have the social determinants of health in place for everyone, then mental health is not going to be something that people experience all across society. So wonderful work. Thank you so much. Thanks, Susan. Thank you, Maria, for appearing on Brainwaves today. Viewers, thank you too. If you'd like to post additional questions, feel free to log on to onemind.org/brainwaves, and you can watch this video and post more questions there. Thanks, everybody, and best wishes for your mental health in 2021 and beyond. Thank you very much.
Mental health is stepping out of the shadows and into the spotlight.
I think I need help.
Can you talk?
Struggling.
I'm here.
Depressed. Can't sleep.
But we need the science and solutions to change lives. Now, more than ever, we are in this fight together. We are of one mind, accelerating brain health for all. Help us fund new treatments at onemind.org.